Hello, and welcome to the Lead What You Live podcast with me, Tina Lizio. And as always, I have another very, very special guest joining me today. She also happens to be a dear friend, so it makes it extra fun and extra special. I'm here today with April Sabral. April Sabral Leadership. April and I actually met in New York at a Global Woman Club entrepreneur mastermind group. And it's wonderful when you get together with like-minded women. She moved to Miami from New York, and so now she's in closer proximity to me, and here we are in my studio today. She is a rock star in the field of leadership, in particular, having been an executive for 30 years, working her way up in the retail industry as a COO and in other positions. She has gone beyond that now as a coach, consultant, facilitator, and leadership. Again, April Sabral Leadership. We're going to talk about all things mindset and leadership and her unique programs. She's written Incurable Positivity, The Positive Effect, and she's about to launch April AI. Very exciting with technology. So without further ado, welcome April to Lead What You Live.
Thank you so much. I'm so excited to be here with you. Like you said, we're dear friends. And yeah, I'm happy to be here and be part of your podcast. So thank you for having me.
Well, thank you for coming up from Miami to Boca to be here in person. It's always more fun to be here together and connect in person versus, via Zoom or with the technology.
Yeah.
And so I also had the pleasure and privilege of working with April. I was at a Women in Retail conference with April, and she had invited me and gave me the opportunity to be a co-facilitator with her in one of her leadership workshops for female executives, and that was a great experience. Most of you know that I am a life strategist and ICF coach and consultant myself in the field of leadership and life strategy, working with entrepreneurs, executives, and founders in their field. And so I really enjoy and want to bring to you individuals, men and women, who are leaders in their field so they can share their knowledge, experience, and the wisdom that comes from it and impart that onto my viewers. So April, give us the journey. How did you start in the retail industry? Where did it all begin for you?
Where did it all begin? Well, I grew up in an antique shop. So my mother was an American hippie who went to the UK back in the late 60s, early 70s. And being, a transplant from the US, she had to figure out how to make money. So she started buying and selling antiques, which evolved into an actual store. So we lived on top of a retail store, which at the time, I didn't think about it. But now when I look back and people ask me this question, I always want to go to, well, I was kicked out of home at 17 because I was a crazy teenager and I got a job in a store. But actually, it started before that. Everything in our house was for sale, right? Everything had a price ticket on it. I watched relationships being built. She was selling pieces of furniture into people's homes. So I did see that at a young age and participate in that. And then 17, being an unruly teenager, got kicked out of home and had to get a job. And the easiest job to get is a job in a retail store because it's, an uneducated job. Most people that have a part-time first job in their teens are either going into hospitality or retail. So that's where it began. And then if you want to talk about like fast forwarding 35 years, I just stuck with it. I didn't leave it. Like, people kept asking me, well, what are you going to do with your life, at 20? What do you want to do? And I really didn't have an answer for that.
And this is in England.
This was back in the UK. Yeah. I didn't have an answer for that. I just knew that I had to, pay my bills, provide for myself. And I had at the time a really good manager who helped me kind of learn life skills because I was very introverted. I was very quiet back then. And so retail kind of taught me to have a voice and confidence, and customers liked me. So then I had my daughter at 23. So now I'm a young mom, single mom. And again, having to kind of figure out how to provide, a living and a home and all of that stuff. And at the time, there was a lot of US retailers that were coming to the UK and opening up. So I went to work for Gap at the time, which I had amazing training and development. And then I worked for Starbucks. And Starbucks, again, invested in training and development. So I started then moving up. So now I became a manager. I transitioned to move to Miami with Starbucks at the time because my parents are American, so I had a passport. And at that time, I just wanted to live somewhere warm and tropical, right? Get away from the UK. And so I moved here with Starbucks. And then,
Very
you
cool.
know,
I had my Starbucks this morning.
right, I worked there for 6 years. And honestly, it was the best experience because I learned hospitality along with retail. Then I went back into fashion retail. And so with that hospitality kind of edge, was able to build teams that had, positive experiences, really cared about the client experience. And I was just in the right place at the right time. I feel like I got great opportunities, great stores. I was on pilot projects. And then after
What does
being
that
in,
mean, pilot projects?
so pilot projects is when a brand or a company is rolling out something new and they take a hand selection of people in the business to kind of test it. And what that does for you in your career is puts you in a bubble or in a bucket of people that are leading a change in an organization. So you get to interact with a lot of people that you may not usually. And so, yeah, I was here in 2006 and then I got the opportunity to move to Canada. And so I went along to Canada with Banana Republic, same thing. I was kind of a part of a pilot group. Went there for 1 year, ended up staying 16 years. And
Oh,
just,
wow. Where in Canada?
in Toronto. And then grew my career from a store manager all the way up to a senior vice president of 300 stores, right? That was not the plan. It just happened.
Evolved.
And evolved, and I got promoted and recruited. And yeah, so I did that. And then, pandemic hit and I started my own company. So it was never an intentional career. I think a lot of us in retail call it an accidental career because it's something that you go into. Nobody really plans it in the store operations side, maybe in the buying side or the marketing side or financial services side of it, because retail's so vast. But if you're working in stores, you're kind of just moving up in the organization. And I was just fortunate enough that I made it to the senior role and got to experience all of that. So yeah, I feel very grateful, very blessed. And I think it really was because of people leadership skills, right? It's all about people in retail. It's a relationship driven business.
Most businesses, I mean, arguably everything is sales and marketing and
Right.
hospitality. And I'm all about health, wealth, and relationships. In particular, the quality of our life experience depends on the quality of our relationships, starting with ourselves. But, we go in. And so speaking of Starbucks, it's a culture. A lot of different, Lululemon. You go in, they're so successful. I know Chip Wilson, with his organic grassroots marketing, he may still send all of his employees after a certain 6 months, 9 months to transformational training.
Right.
So that everybody is sort of on the same page and understands, leadership. And so you said you're fortunate along the way to have had great mentors, it sounds like.
Yeah, great mentors and great brands. People always ask me now if they're looking at growing their career, do they choose the brand or do they choose the boss that they want to work for? And I was very fortunate. I worked for Banana Republic, Starbucks, Apple, Holt Renfrew, David's Tea, like these amazing brands. But I also had amazing bosses at the same time. So I always say you kind of have to, yes, the person you work for is very important, but if you're working for an amazing brand, you can kind of craft your own career within that. And so I was very lucky, there's no accidents, right? Like I don't believe in that. So I think now reflecting back, that gave me the platform and the knowledge and the experience to do what I'm doing now, which again, I could never have foreseen that like 10 years ago,
What I find is interesting is many people in the C-suite have worked up from an operational standpoint specifically without having been in sales and marketing. And so that can lack a little bit in leadership and not if they weren't also prior in a sales and marketing track. So what's really interesting and I think makes you very successful is that you worked in retail, in sales. You understood that early on before evolving in the managing of salespeople, right?
Yeah.
So, and then worked up sort of in operations. So you understand what everybody, down the line is experiencing.
Yeah, and I think that's really key with with today when I'm working with brands, because when I'm in the room with these leaders, I've done their job, right? Like if you look at my career, I always say 80% of it was store to middle management. The 20% of it was senior leadership. So I didn't go to school. I didn't get a degree. I worked my way up by doing the role, understanding it, and driving positive results. But I did that through building amazing teams, right? So it all starts with people. And so I've done the job. I've been there. I understand what they're going through. Retail is not an easy career choice by any means, but it can be very rewarding. So that's where I feel like our training and what we're doing really resonates with people. And there's not a lot of people that are training retail and hospitality leaders that have actually done the job. There's a lot of leadership training out there. There's tons. Like I'm a John C. Maxwell coach as well, right? So tons of training out there. But yeah, I think it matters when you've done it, because you've walked in the shoes and you know what works.
Yeah, you have like I have a forever learner. And so always furthering my education and being open-minded to other processes and methodologies and other types of, looking at other leaders out there. Make a distinction between management and leadership. Management, because managers get to be leaders, but it is distinct from the C-suite leaders.
Yes.
So,
yeah, when I think about management is the doingness of being a leader. So, whether you're executing on a strategy, you're looking at processes, you're looking at those types of things that are very operationally based. When you're looking at leadership is looking at people. It's looking about inspiration. It's looking about coaching. It's looking about developing other leaders, right? John Maxwell has a book which I absolutely love as a coach. It's about what your responsibility as a leader is to develop more leaders, right? To fuel that pipeline. When you're a manager, you're really focused on the results and the operations of what you're doing every day. And so I think that there's a clear distinction in that. But I do think that you have to do both. I don't think you can be one or the other. I think you have to, at different times, step into the role of a leader and a manager. You can't just focus on people. You have to focus on process, right? Because without a process, how are you going to get things done, right? So that's how I would clearly define it.
In terms of executing the strategy. So the leader gets to manage its people, and those who are managing need to lead those people that are in their charge. So it goes together, but there are distinct, would you say that it's more important looking at the ways of being of a leader more than the doingness, like you talked about in management? So going into that, so talk about this word, we got this positive. Let's be positive, right?
Yeah.
And so incurable positivity, the positive effect in your leadership. What has came to mind in your 30-year career is the need for sort of that positive, and I'll use the word mindset that we'll talk about, a positive mindset that's really crucial in leadership for effectiveness and getting the results that you want.
Yeah, I mean, I learned because I was raised by an American hippie, right, who was into self-development and introduced me to Abraham Hicks and Eckhart Tolle and all of Wayne Dyer and all of those great leaders.
Tony Robbins and
yeah, I think she walked on the coals when I was like 5, right? Like she was that woman that introduced me to all of that, and from those teachings helped me understand at a young age that everything I think, everything I do has an effect and manifests in physical form. So with that in mind, when I was running businesses and teams, I was given a sales goal. I was given a profit margin goal. I was given hiring goals. I was given product turnover goals. And so I would always approach things from understanding that if my people were on the same page as me, right, positive, in no resistance to what I was asking them to do, we were all in alignment. Therefore, our energy and our effort is going to be yielding the right rewards, right? So down to like running one store to running 300 stores, my goal is always to get people's minds in the right place so that we can move forwards together. Because otherwise, it's like climbing up a mountain with resistance, right? As opposed to going downstream, right? So with that, I just think that positivity and positive thinking, when you get people on board with that, then you're going to achieve more. And so I learned that at a young age, and I always brought that into what I was doing, and it always worked. I would get promoted, I would get given opportunities in my career that other people didn't get. And now we teach it, it's called the positive engagement formula. Like if you can ignite people's positive emotions, feelings which make them feel really good, right? Being happy, being joyful, being excited, and you can give them the skills and abilities to do the job. 9 times out of 10, people are going to be happy at work and they're going to do a good job, and you're going to achieve those results. You can teach people the skills and abilities, you can train them, but if they don't feel good about working for you and they're not thinking positively about you, then you're going to be facing a lot more resistance. Because when people go home at night, who do they talk about 9 times out of 10?
Their boss.
Right?
Yeah.
So I had a leader a long time ago. Actually, he lived in Boca at the time. And he said to me, when people go home at night, they're either talking about you in a positive way or not. And so how do you want to be talked about every night at the dinner table? Do you want their friends and family to be recruiting them to go and work somewhere else? Because then you're going to be dealing with turnover. Or do you want people to be saying, oh, you've got the best job ever, and supporting them do a good job? So that always stuck with me. And so that positivity is really important. And you know what, Tina? When I go and do training now, it's one of the things that people want more of. They want to talk more about mindset. They want to talk about how they get people to move forwards in a positive way. I think there's a lot more understanding now, right, with Joe Dispenza of the world being more commercialized and all of that, of like the difference it makes when people are positive and when they think positive and when they feel positive. So compared to like, I don't know, 35 years ago when I was talking about it, people thought I was crazy. But now I think that there's a desire for it. But it's a skill set. Positivity is a skill set.
Oh, I love that. I love that you just said that. Yeah, it's an attitude. I subscribe to, most importantly, the 3 universal laws. Everything is energy. So we understand everything is energy. Therefore, energy is everything. Our consciousness is what creates, and for every choice, there's a consequence. So I would argue also that positivity is a choice. So Napoleon Hill, Think and Grow Rich, book that's been around a very long time, is 13 Principles. Number 1 has to start with a desire. So individuals get to have a desire. They need to have a desire in order to do anything, right? To do anything. Then the willingness and the commitment. So I think as a leader like yourself, I have a strong desire to inspire. I feel that inspiration is one of the greatest motivators. So then it becomes, understanding how to inspire, others and have that positive mindset, and also showing individuals, and I think you'd probably agree with this, I'll use the word agree, is that we won't always agree, but for the sake of the team, and you're talking about managing 300 stores, right?
Yeah.
Even if we don't all agree, can we, for the sake of the vision and the mission, come into alignment, even if we don't agree?
Well, and you talked about, I'm going to bring it back to beingness, right? So one of the things I learned when I used to travel stores across North America and ask people, why are they so successful? Why is this store successful, but this other one isn't? And they would say it was because they felt supported. Number one thing, it wasn't the product we gave them. It wasn't the payroll hours we gave them. It wasn't the location that we gave them. It was that they felt supported. So as a leader, if you're supporting somebody, right, who are you being as a leader, right, to support somebody? You're usually being present. You're usually being patient. You're usually, all of these attributes. And that helps people be seen, heard, and then feel valued. Because that's really what everybody wants. So if you go back to inspiration that you just talked about, inspiration comes because I feel inspired because somebody said something that resonated with me or ignited something. But 9 times out of 10, when it's your boss, it's because you see me. It's because you hear me.
Appreciate and
you
acknowledge.
appreciate me.
It is said, research has shown people will do more for being shown appreciation and acknowledgement, being valued, than they will for an increase in pay. salary.
100%. And that's why,
And that's how you build loyalty
and that's
as
how
well.
you build it. And that's why we teach mindset and skill set, right? Because we teach the first pillar is about accepting people for who they are. Really, what does that look like? What does supporting somebody look like, and how we unpack that? Because it's the number one thing. If you can get that right, you will ignite those positive emotions in people. You will help people feel heard, seen, and valued. You will make them feel good about what they're doing, which you can do that. You've lowered resistance to you as a leader, because as a leader, as a title in a corporate company, you automatically create resistance with a title. If you think, oh no, people like me, they all love me. Yeah, they're going to agree with you a lot because you hold their career and their job and their livelihood in your hands. And I learned that just the more I moved up in roles, the bigger my title got, the more people agreed with me. And I was like, this is not normal.
Right.
You know?
Yeah. It's not authentic. There's a part of you that knows there's some kiss ass
Yeah, it's true.
going on.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah. Yeah.
And so let's talk about that, because what's super unique that you understand is it's not just about the leadership skills of the communication and the managing others; those are in your charge, but it's also conflict resolution, but the need for mindset, mindset as a skill set. So mindset's sort of its own category. We talk about the need for mindset, get your mind right, and then there's these leadership skills.
Yeah.
But so share with the viewers how you sort of bring those together in your April Sabral leadership.
Yeah, we have 3 pillars that we work through. But I want to go back to like feeling valued. How did I learn that piece of feeling valued? I have a twin sister that never made me feel valued as a human, right? So that is the core of what drives me to make
Identical
other people.
or fraternal? Identical twin
So,
sister.
I don't want to get into that, but that when you have that experience, and all of us have had experiences of not feeling valued. So if you can go back and think about a time in your life where you didn't feel valued and understand what it would take to make you feel valued, then if you put that framework on or that filter as a leader, you'll look at your people very differently every day, because everybody wants to feel valued, right? So I think that's important to know, because that is the foundation of why we do what we do. But there's 3 pillars. One is accept, the second is create, and the third one is teach. So the first one, accept, is all about
Act.
Yeah, how you act as a leader matters, and it creates a ripple, right? And so accept is all about valuing people, making them feel seen. The second pillar, which is create, is all about what you think about, you create more of, and where you spend your time, you create more of, and what your relationship is with time will create more of. So that's where we bring in the mindset training. And it's interesting because when I wrote the first book, I started throwing in there, in sprinkles in this pillar. And I talked about The Science of Mind, Ernest Holmes, and that's like my favorite book of all time.
Which is called?
The Science of Mind by Ernest Holmes.
The Science of Mind,
Yeah.
okay.
And it's a metaphysical teaching about the laws of the universe. He was a philosopher in the early 1900s in Hollywood, and people would go to his house and, they would talk about philosophies, about the laws of the universe. And he was very versed on that. And so people would just listen to him. And, this book came about. It's a very big book. You can't sit down and read it. You have to study it. It's like a study book. And so I've been studying that for, 20 years. And so I sprinkled that in because I know the power of it. Then people started asking me more in training, well, tell me more about that. What do you mean what you think about, you create? And obviously it's more mainstream now, right? Because we see it everywhere manifesting. And so,
As a man thinketh.
Yeah, all of
think
that.
Think and grow
it's
rich.
It's been around a long time. This is not new information, right? And so I wrote the second book, Incurable Positivity, which is the 7 steps to shift your negative thinking to positive thinking. And there is 7 steps involved in that. The first one being commitment. You have to commit above all else that you will strive to have a positive mind, a positive thought process, because you understand that what you think, you create. And if you really operate from that perspective, you will be so aware that you can't not shift it, right? And we say shift, not change, because change is hard. It creates resistance, whereas shift is easier. So the first point is commitment, and then it goes into the other 6 steps. And, I'm not going to go on the whole book, but it definitely is a commitment to shift it. And so that's positive thinking at its best. And if you can start to retrain your brain, if you can start to rewire it, and you know this because you've
I
been to
would
Joe
say,
Dispenza's meditation
yeah,
retreat, right?
exactly. And the one thing God gave us all is free will to choose our wants.
That's right.
So we get to choose, and that we get to choose what we're thinking
Yeah.
also. And of course, that sounds easier said than done. But when we're aware of our thinking,
Yes.
and we can choose to think different. Okay, Apple.
Yeah.
We can choose to think differently. So there is, there's more than one way to look at
there's
everything.
more than one way, but what we use is a very because as an operator working in retail, that is not a highly educated population. What I learned is the simpler you make it, the easier it is to apply, right? That's what makes our training very unique because it's very action orientated. People walk away and they're like, I can do that tomorrow. It's not this big theory. And so a simple framework is the 3 R's, like, pinpoint the thought that you're having, release it, right? Reach for a new thought and then reframe it by using a positive affirmation statement. Most people can say that. So, I can't reach this goal. It's too high, the company's giving me. Or I can choose to believe I can achieve this goal. And then the third one would be like, it felt really good to achieve this goal. And I teach that to business leaders and it changes their business. And it's a very simple concept. And that's where people would ask for more of that training, and even more now, more than ever, because it's just
choose to believe. See it, believe it, and know you can achieve it.
Yeah.
If you can conceive of it, you can achieve it. But see it as done.
Yes.
Almost like, imagine how would you feel in your body if this were the result? What result are you looking for?
Yeah.
And how would it feel if it were already done?
Yeah, and I had this moment in my career where I nearly derailed the whole company from accomplishing a goal because I didn't believe that the goal was achievable. And I had a leader, and it was based on the evidence of what I had seen in the past. In our business, we work on last year's sales, and then we're always striving for an improvement on last year to this year. And they gave me an increase. I was like, that's just crazy. Who came up with that? And I went on a mission to try and convince them that they were wrong, right? The person that had given me the goal. And she just looked at me one day and she said, if you can't believe it, you won't achieve it. And that one sentence that she said to me, I was like, she is right. And I was influencing an entire organization by saying...
By feeling it wasn't realistic.
Right. And there's so many...
You had a limit on your belief system about what you thought was possible.
Right. So then I said, okay, if this is the goal that we have, what do I need to do with my mind to get it right? And then what actions do I need to take with my team? And we never talked about what we couldn't do. We talked about what we could do. There's a story in the book, it's called The $1 Million Chocolate Bar Story. Where I wrapped these, chocolate bars in $1 million bill, gave it to everybody, said, okay, we're going to go after the goal. And we beat the goal. We actually did 20% more than what they'd asked us to do. And it taught me a huge lesson in influence, in how, as a leader, our beliefs can shift business, influence the people that work with us.
100%.
All of that, right?
Yeah.
So that's why mindset's so important.
Yeah. And so, and leaders are asking for more. What do you believe that leaders today and your leadership training, coaching is not just applicable to the retail industry, because leadership goes across all industries, really.
Yeah, it does.
The skill set.
Yeah.
So what are the biggest challenges for leaders today that you're seeing?
I think the biggest challenges is managing multi-generational workforce. That's a big one, number one. Number two, how do they bring AI into the business without making people feel threatened about losing their job? That's a real challenge. Change management around that is huge, right? So those two are the ones that I see are the biggest. You can go down the list of like, oh, there's no good people. I don't buy into that story. I think that's rubbish. I think that there's amazing people. That's just your belief. And so if you can shift that, you'll attract them. But I think those are the two biggest things, because we've got so many different generations in the workforce now that want different things, that require different things. And so, it's not a one size fits all approach. And that's why I think that being supportive and finding out what people want and connecting versus just communicating is really key. And then AI, let's face it, AI is coming. It's been here. We've been using it in our business for 7 years. And a lot of times when I'm coaching people, I'm like, okay, open up ChatGPT. Let's ask it how it's going to solve this problem with you. And they're like, oh, I didn't even think about that. You know, we talk about this, right? You
Yep.
have to be good at asking questions as a leader.
Yes.
You only get answers to the questions you ask. So now we have ChatGPT, AI, helping us. We've got to ask some really good questions. We've got to learn those good questions. Every time I sign up for a course now, there's a whole load of prompts. Ask this prompt to get this answer. So if you're a really good coach and trainer, you're bringing that in. Like even yesterday, we're rolling out a new program called Lead Smarter, Not Harder for small businesses, because predominantly I work with the corporate brands, right? And I was saying to my team, listen, that was then like have a PDF, have a template. We'll give you templates. No, we're gonna show them how to build templates with AI. We're doing them a service if we show them that. If we don't show them that and we just use it for ourselves, we're actually doing them a disservice because they have the tool like we do. ChatGPT is for everybody.
Right.
So how do we show them how to use it to create the tools and save time? Because I just did a whole business plan on it the other day. I was like, whoa, I would have never thought about that, right? So bringing AI in is important, but also how do they balance that with the human skills? Because now you get to really step into your humanness because you can get all the mediocre tasks out of the way, right?
Well, yeah, embracing it not as it's a replacement, but as a support system.
Yeah.
So that actually people have more time. You talk about creating time. So now we have more time to connect on different brainstorming, masterminding, collaboration, cooperation that's required in coming together that you're not going to solve with ChatGPT. But although ChatGPT can be very supportive in those conversations, in those discussions.
I've used it, like I wanted to send a message to somebody. I've actually used it. Can you make me sound less emotional and less reactive? And it actually rewords me. I'm like, God damn it, that sounds so good. I want to sound like that, copy and paste. So I think it can help us. And that's why we're bringing out Ask April AI, because leaders text message me all day. And I'm like, I just want to give them a tool that can help them communicate better, right? Or find the resources.
What would be a better way of saying go F yourself?
Yeah, it's true. It's true. I literally ask it every Friday. I recap my week and I say, if you were my business coach, what would you coach me on? If you were my life coach, if you were my relationship coach, what would you coach me on? And it gives me feedback and it gives me a whole plan of what I can do differently this week, right?
What is the greatest fear of leaders? Are they afraid of AI taking over? And P.S., even looking at the retail industry in particular, look at what's happening since COVID, Amazon, everybody online, right? The face of retail in particular, and what's happening with the box store, like the actual physical location of these retail stores across the board, no matter what you're selling. What's the future of retail looking like for leadership, given the technology and people ordering things online and not going to physical store locations?
I'm going to just myth bust the whole online's taking over. Online in the US is only around 18% of total retail sales, okay, in the country. In Europe, it's around 27%. So one store will close, another one will open. We have way too much real estate for retail to ever completely shut. And people are always going to want to have an experience. But the retailers that will survive will be the ones that do the right thing, right? Listen to what their customers want. Target the other day did the wrong thing with DEI. And I went past a Target yesterday and the parking lot was pretty empty. So, you got to listen. You got to do the right thing. You got to have a strong balance sheet, right? Know where you're spending your money and all of that good stuff. But I've been in retail for 35 years. It's never going to disappear. Maybe it will grow another 3% online. But even my 21-year-old son likes to go to the mall. He does not shop online, right? Where I see retail growing even more is I see resale and thrift. Just that market.
The consignment
is
stores
exploding.
Is exploding.
Facebook Marketplace, stores
Offer Up,
Poshmark, all of these avenues of reselling, because we have a generation that's way more conscious. Everything I buy is thrift, resell. And so I see that continuing to grow. But I think if you go back to the question you said about what are leaders scared of, I would say that they are afraid of AI. and also it replacing themselves. I think we did an event with Microsoft last fall, and one of the statistics I Googled, and I was doing some research because I was doing a talk about how as a leader you bring AI in as an ally versus seeing it as a threat. And it was, there was a Google search number of how do I improve my AI skills as a leader was something like 700 million searches. If you put at work on the end of it, it tripled. So I think people are seeking how do I improve my AI skills at work as a leader and at work is a huge, compared to communication skills, which is like a tenth of that when you look at the Google searches every day for questions. Because I always put questions in and then see how many people are searching. I don't know if you do that, but like I put a question in Google and then you can see how many people are searching it. And then you put another question, you go, holy moly, like there's a lot of people looking for that. Well, if people are asking that question, that's a problem we need to solve, right?
So interesting. So what's coming to mind is how, from this conversation, how I can use and others can use actually AI to support their communication. Because my thing is communication is like numero uno.
Yeah.
Like how am I communicating the message?
Yes.
How am I in my ways of being? How am I communicating with my peers and my people and in my personal life too?
Yeah.
It's not just what's going on at work, but
No.
we don't separate, right? The way we do one thing can show us the way we do anything and how we show up across the board.
Well, you know that because you're a transformational trainer, right? Like
Right,
that's what you teach in
Yeah.
transformation. When I went through the training that you're certified in, it was actually how you do one thing is how you do everything. I'm like, oh, that's so true. We want to separate work from personal, but and you don't show up at work and tell everybody your personal life, right? Like there's a line there, but how you behave is how you behave, right? So I think that's a very true statement. Yeah, and I think using it in your personal life is huge. I use it to send messages to people personally so that I don't sound like a crazy person, right? Like I literally talk it out loud so it sounds like this is what I'm trying to say. Because if you go to marriage counseling, they'll tell you, this is what I heard, is this what you meant? It's one of those phrases, right, that you learn in good communication skills and conflict.
Imago therapy.
Right.
What I heard you say
is this what you meant?
Right.
And so I think a lot of times when I'm using ChatGPT, it's because this is what I'm going to say, but it's not really what I meant to say. So I'm using it to kind of like help me really get what I mean to say versus what I'm saying, because words, emotions, when it's emotional, it gets all confusing to us, right, when we say things. So
what's the hardest thing for people to accept? So looking at those 3 pillars again with the first one of acceptance, we have to start by just accepting ourselves and having grace and patience with ourselves and knowing what our strengths and weaknesses are. How about asking for feedback? How about leadership and asking for feedback about how we're showing up?
yeah.
I feel that's missing. A lot of leaders are not looking for the feedback necessarily, and all could benefit from getting a feedback from the collective, or at least working with a coach and consultant.
Yeah, the first step in the accept pillar is face reality, right? And the reason why we talk about that is
What are the facts?
yeah, what are the facts? Like, how do you think your people feel working for you? I asked that question. We're going to talk about facing reality, or, facing reality in like what's happening, because we have our personal biases, we have our own judgments, we view everything through our own lens. And so sometimes what we think is happening is not really happening. And when I ask people, how well do you think you know the team? Everybody's hand goes up in the room. And when I ask them, when was the last time somebody resigned on your team and you didn't see it coming and they were somebody that was a good performer? Everybody's hand goes up in the room because everybody's had that happen to them. So, okay, well then how did that happen? What caused that to happen? Usually I've been the person that's called those people and said, why are you leaving? Oh, it's because I didn't feel supported by my leader. Okay, so there is something missing there, right, that you didn't see. So I think, yeah, it's a hard pill to swallow, but your people are a mirror of who you are, right? And so I think a lot of times we think we need to know all the answers as a leader. We really don't, right?
You can get a lot of really good feedback from your people.
Yeah.
That can be very supportive. So sort of accepting the facts.
Yeah.
Being aware of and being with our feelings about the facts.
Yeah.
good and bad or indifferent, right?
Yeah.
I don't like to look at things as good or bad or
Yeah.
right or wrong. It's, is this effective for the goals that we're trying to achieve?
I love that you said that because we actually teach leaders how to take like, dislike, good and bad out of their language because they're
Yeah,
non-productive.
right.
Yeah, we call it using performance management statements versus personal judgment statements.
Right.
Right, like because you hold you hold somebody's career in your hands. You can say, "Oh, I really like that person. I really like that they did this," but that's just not productive. If you can be more specific about what it
What
is that
is that
they're
you liked?
doing,
Right.
yeah, and how that relates to what the expectations are, well, now you're building a performance culture, right? Versus
Correct.
a personally opinionated driven culture.
So then we have the create and then teaching.
Yeah.
So now how do leaders get to teach?
They get to coach and mentor, right? Like you got to
And that
build.
is a big part of where you're going
Yeah.
as well in your leadership. So talk about that.
Yeah, I mean, I think I've always been focused on coaching, but I remember having this moment, this personally, where I was standing in the kitchen one day and when my daughter was young, and I remember saying the same thing over and over again. Can you just put the dishes away in the cupboard? And she would always do it. So it was like a creative expression, right? In the kitchen cabinet, because she's an artist and she would just throw them in there. And it caused havoc in the house because at the time, my former husband was like OCD. And so it was causing problems. And so I remember standing there going, I'm saying the same thing over and over again, and we're getting the same result. And I thought, well, at work, when we're trying to make something look great in a store, we have pictures, like visual images of things. I thought, well, what if I just create a visual picture for her of like paint by numbers of what it should look like and then give it to her, right? She's a visual artist. So I did that and it changed everything. And in that moment, I thought, wow, I took a teaching approach as opposed to a directive approach. So we teach leaders how to direct, train and coach, and that there is a difference between all three of them because most leaders think they're coaching, but they're directing in reality, and then they're getting the same result and they don't know why. And so we teach them that. So that was a big piece of it. And also I had a HR leader tell me a long time ago, if you take a teaching approach, you will be less frustrated. If you show up as if you're here to impart knowledge and share with people every day, and your job is just to teach people how to do something differently or better, then you'll be less frustrated because otherwise you just walk around going, why are they doing this? Why are they doing that? I've told them 5 times, right? This whole experience with the dishes. And so I think if you take a learner approach and like you're here to teach and mentor, you'll be less frustrated, you'll be more patient, and you'll develop those skills that help you do that, right?
April's a mother, and I have 3 grown children as well. So, are you parents listening out there? I realized along the way too, as they were getting older, that taking a teaching approach was
Yes.
more enrolling than being directive. Otherwise, you sound like a nag. The
Yeah.
nagging mother, and then there's resistance.
Right.
It's like, no, I'm not going to make my bed because you keep bugging me about it. I'll make
Right.
my bed when do I make my bed, right? So how do we, again, it goes back to inspiration.
Yeah.
It goes back to inspiring and motivating by way of also teaching. And then people are armed with that additional knowledge and know-how.
Yeah.
They increase their skill set, that increases confidence, self-esteem. Yes, I can. Now I believe. Now we can achieve. And it, goes up the line. And so your program, which is so great, is also going to leaders now
Yeah.
and saying, hey, I can work with you, and let me also work with you in teaching this to your people so that then there isn't this ongoing neediness. You'll have it within your organization so
Yeah.
that can go on in perpetuity and longevity, right?
Yeah, yeah.
Because this is an infinite game. Thank you, Simon Sinek, a great leadership coach and
Yeah.
consultant,
Yeah.
is that leaders eat last. And so they get to teach it to others so that then others can sort of pass it down the line.
Yeah, and one of the things I'm just thinking about the question you asked me about like leaders struggling as well. One of the biggest struggles I think is accountability. Right. What is accountability? How do they hold teams accountable without making them feel bad? Everybody wants more accountability. Nobody really knows what it is. They think it's like a tough conversation. It's actually not. It's an honest conversation, right? So that's, I have a new book coming out next month or the month after called Positive Accountability, because in the workshops we have an accountability framework that we teach people that like demystifies all of that and helps them approach it in a different way. And so I'm excited about that coming out because I think it will help a lot of people just put accountability frameworks in their business, which will teach these skills to leaders and help them hold people more accountable and themselves.
And I think a big part of the accountability is looking at responsibility, right? How can we all, not like it's the truth, but come from a place of, if I were responsible for it all,
Yes.
right? Who's the person that I would have to be? What would I have to step into? What are the things that I would need to do? So I think a way to hold ourselves accountable and accountable to others is if we take a I'm responsible approach. Because knowing, again, we have the free will to choose
We do.
who we want to be, what we want to do. And so in the knowing of that, of really embodying that and knowing that is I think the most powerful place to stand. Like, I'm responsible for it all. Not like a truth, but a powerful place to stand.
Yeah,
and from there, we can hold ourselves and others accountable.
Yeah, and it's how you transfer ownership, right, as a leader, because a lot of leaders think they have to do everything themselves or get bogged down with doing everything themselves.
Struggle to delegate.
Yeah, they struggle to delegate, and then they do delegate or they end up doing it themselves because they haven't transferred ownership, which makes the other person responsible, right? So it's really helping them transfer ownership. That's a big piece that people miss. So how you do that. So that's where that really breaks it down. So I'm excited about that. But yeah, we're all have to do our part, right? Like, we're all responsible every day.
Absolutely.
There's no blame game going on, because if you're in
Absolutely.
you're in that place, you're not owning your part, you know?
Well, I just love being in your energy field because you do always, in my experience, have a very positive aura. And I like to also
So do you.
bring the energy,
Yeah.
the positive energy. So it's always, I mean, you and I, we could go on for hours and hours and hours.
Yeah.
So, but it's really incredible seeing you evolve also into the place where you're going in April AI coming up. So thank you. Thank you for coming and being here today. April Sabral Leadership. Check it out. And I look forward to working with you too, working more with you in your frameworks and your leadership, because I have before, and I really appreciate them and that combination of mindset and leadership that is so important, that's unique, that you've put together. So thank you.
Thank you, Tina.
And so it's to be continued. Thank you again for tuning in. Lead What You Live podcast with Tina Lizio. If you are a leader in your field with some unique knowledge and experience to bring forth and impart to others, please reach out to me, tinalizio.com. And I look forward to speaking with you. Ciao for now.